are the American military forces right now organizing to seize KHARG Island in Iran. In the United States, they are speaking publicly about negotiations but secretly preparing for ground action in Iran. At the Pentagon, they are preparing for a weeks-long campaign to open the Strait of Hormuz. US intelligence has exposed the breaking point of the Revolutionary Guards, a blow to the regime in Tehran. Dozens of bombs were dropped on Iran's rare and heavily protected site. Last night, the Air Force of Israel struck in Tehran a central site used by the Iranian Defensive Ministry to produce major components for ballistic missiles. Israel dealt Iran a blow at the heart of its economy and erased Iran's giant steel plants. And with all of this, today, yet another senior figure in Iran's nuclear program was eliminated after 3 scientists were terminated in mysterious explosions. Iran's president is against the Revolutionary Guards, and according to Pezeshkian, without the ceasefire, Iran's economy will collapse. And the warning in the United States, just 8 hours from the White House, Iran's ghost army is waiting for the order from Canada. All the details are coming up next. Russian revenge against the United States. Is that coming up or not? We will bring you the full story behind the destruction of the American intelligence aircraft in Saudi Arabia and why Russia is connected to all of it. And we will also bring you what can be learned from the Houthis joining this war. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are boots on the ground that bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and also the full truth about what is happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And this is day 30 of the Roaring Lion War, or by its American name, Epic Fury. And this morning, sirens again all across Israel. 4 launches from Iran since this morning began, and all of them intercepted. Thanks God. And at this hour, the IDF has completed another wave of strikes deep inside Iran. The Air Force aircrafts completed another focused wave of strikes a short time ago against the core infrastructure of the terrorist regime. The targets included the capital, Tehran, and other strategic areas throughout the country. The IDF is striking the Revolutionary Guards targets in Shiraz, and last night, Israel erased Iran's steel giants. Security officials estimated the damage caused to the regime by the strikes on the military industries is in the tens of billions of dollars. Many hundreds of factories were destroyed, and hundreds of commanders in the industrial network were terminated. The Air Force, under the direction of the military intelligence, completed during the night a broad wave of strikes against the infrastructure of the Iranian terrorist regime in Tehran. As part of the effort to deepen the damage to the regime's military industries, the IDF struck a central site used by the Iranian Defensive Ministry to produce major components for ballistic missiles. The site is one of the only 2 of its kind in Iran. And over the weekend, in Iran, more than 100 targets of the Iranian terror regime were attacked. In Lebanon, more than 800 Hezbollah terrorists were eliminated, and more than 170 infrastructure sites of the terrorist organization were attacked. We are already a month into the war with Iran. The military leadership in the United States is presenting the achievements of the air-pounding campaign. The United States has crossed the threshold of 11,000 targets that were struck inside Iran, alongside more than 150 Iranian vessels that were damaged or destroyed. Just a few days ago, on March 2026, 23 of March, CENTCOM was still standing at more than 9,000 targets, more than 9,000 combat sorties, and more than 140 vessels, meaning that in less than a week and during the negotiations, American strikes were added at a very high pace. This means thousands of strikes and targets. The target list includes headquarters and intelligence branches of the Revolutionary Guards, the air defensive arrays, the ballistic missile sites, the coastal missile sites, the military communications infrastructure, the missile and the drone production plants, bunkers for storing weapons, ships, and submarines of the Iranian Navy, and military assistance facilities. And all of it was carried out through a massive firepower array that included B-1, B-2, and B-52 bombers, F-15, F-16, F-18, F-22, and F-35 aircraft, electronic warfare aircraft, refueling aircrafts, Apache helicopters, MQ-9 drones, one-way attack drones, nuclear aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, missile destroyers, and also Patriot, THAAD, and HIMARS systems. After all of this, what is now taking shape at the political level in the United States is a decision on the next stage, whether to intensify the strikes until the complete collapse of the rule of the Ayatollahs, or to use the tightening of the economic siege to reach a breaking point. In recent days, reports have been rising that the United States is preparing to send ground forces onto the Iranian soil in order to carry out raids by special forces and infantry. American officials said yesterday that the plan is to strike military infrastructure and that the forces may seize KHARG Island. U.S. Central Command is publishing dramatic footage from the air of the sinking of what remains of the Iranian Navy at sea. Iran is deploying an arched defense array in the Strait of Hormuz, including anti-ship missile batteries, swarms of suicide drones, and smart naval mines. The strategy of the Revolutionary Guards is intended to turn the world's main energy route into a debt trap, while collecting illegal transmit fees from civilian vessels, in a move that is seen in Washington as state-backed international piracy. And did Russia provide intelligence to Iran? The Revolutionary Guards are boasting of the painful hit on the American aircraft, but was it based on Russian intelligence? Iran destroyed a strategic American asset. Was it with the Russian support or not? A severe blow to the American intelligence took place. Iran hit the special aerial asset of the United States military in Saudi Arabia. This refers to one of the strongest intelligence tools of the US military, a Boeing E-3 Sentry aircraft, which was destroyed in an Iranian strike on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Ukraine claims Russia photographed the base by satellite 3 times before the strike. And today, in the regular parade of threats by Iran's senior officials, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said that Iran's army is waiting for the entry of United States ground forces so that it can set them on fire and punish countries in the region that cooperate with the Americans. Cracks at the top of Tehran. Iran's president is in direct confrontation with the Revolutionary Guards over the management of this war. On his part, Iran's president warned of the economic collapse of his country. He is demanding that executive authority be returned to the government, but Revolutionary Guards commander General Vihadi firmly rejected all these demands. The current situation is that Iran's president is standing against the Revolutionary Guards, and according to Pezeshkian, the Iranian economy may collapse within 3 to 4 weeks. Tension developed between Iran's president and the commander of the Revolutionary Guards around the way of this war is being managed and its destructive effects on the local economy. In response to Iran's president, the Speaker of the Iranian parliament, who was marked by Trump as a possible leader of the Islamic Republic on the day after the war, attacked the United States and said today, "The enemy openly sends a message of negotiations and secretly plans a ground attack." He added, "As long as the Americans seek Iran's surrender, our response is clear. We will never surrender." In the shadow of the contacts between Iran and the United States, the Emiratis are making clear that any arrangement must include a commitment to prevent future attacks and compensation for the damage caused after thousands of launches towards them took place. And a month into this war, civilians in Iran are wondering whether it will bring down the regime or make it more extreme. And the Houthis from Yemen, remember the terrorists on flip-flops that are launching rockets? Yes, they are back. And in the last 24 hours, they launched a ballistic missile, a cruise missile, and a drone at Israel. So will the campaign expand into Yemen? A senior IDF official announced that the army is prepared for Houthi fire and that they are only a distraction. In the IDF, they claimed that already at the beginning of the war, they had prepared for the Houthis joining this campaign. The message of the Houthis is meant to improve Iran's position in negotiations with the United States. The Houthis, who are busy rebuilding devastated Yemen after internal wars and Israeli and American strikes, are therefore not rushing to open a direct front despite the launches towards Israel. Their threats are meant to deter Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, and Donald Trump, and to remind them that they have the power to shut down another important strait as well. There's a lot ahead of us, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are boots on the ground that bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. And this is day 30 of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms to get our view behind the scenes of what it's like to live in Israel in this war. Our current Middle East correspondent, Mati Shoshani. First of all, how are you doing? And thank you very much for being with us. Hopefully you're not in the rain like I am. Good, I see.
I'm not in the rain. I'm in the office. I've learned my lesson, Yael. I've been in the rain enough times in the last couple of days.
I guess I'll learn
by the way,
the hard way, as I like to do all the time.
Before we get started, Yael, I don't think you got a chance to see this. There was just a ballistic missile from Iran that fell in the northern Negev in Ramat Chovav, which is Israel's treatment center for hazardous materials. So this is breaking news that just happened literally as we started this broadcast, where a ballistic missile touched ground in the northern Negev in Ramat Chovav, which is Israel's hazardous material treatment center. The government has already said that there doesn't seem to be a leak or release of anything substantially dangerous, but that just shows you what the Iranians are going after. They're going after ways to harm the population. By the way, this center is minutes away from the biggest city in southern Israel, Beersheba, a biblical city. So I wanted to just give that quick update as we're entering into this part of the broadcast.
Any casualties, Mati?
None. No casualties and no substantial damage as of yet. But again, a substantial uptick all day in missile launches from Iran towards Israel, from the Houthis towards Israel, and of course, in addition to that, from Hezbollah in Lebanon towards Israel. Let me just make sure you didn't lose me in the broadcast. No, we're still here.
Yeah, I'm still with you. So, Mati, it looks like this war is about to escalate even further because we have reports of more boots on the ground, more soldiers, and more military power that are coming into the region, while at the same time, negotiations does not seem like they're moving anywhere because basically America is telling the Iranians, stop with your nuclear program, stop with your ballistic missile program, and stop funding terrorists all over the world and all over this region. And the Iranians are saying, okay, we received your demands. These are our demands. Pay us back everything that you harmed us in all the damages of this war. And then also let us continue the nuclear program. Let us continue the ballistic missile. And of course, we are not talking even about financing our proxies in this region. So it's kind of like there is no negotiation. There is no middle ground. Looks like the only option is escalation. Can you break this down for us?
Yeah, I'd say maybe that is exactly the negotiation that we're looking at. I mean, in the Middle East, sometimes negotiations are like in a bazaar. With the Iranians, the negotiations are always like in a bazaar, not in the good way, by the way, in the bad way, where you say one thing and they say, well, we never planned to sell any of this. Let's start from the beginning. Trump put forward his 15-point plan. The Iranians responded with their 3-point, their 5-point, and today their 9-point plan for the negotiation. And in it are, requests like Israel and the United States, I can't not laugh when I repeat these things, must be recognized internationally as the aggressors. Very important that everyone knows that the bad guys in this story are the people who are trying to prevent us from using nuclear weapons to kill other people. Yeah, clearly these are the bad guys. These are the aggressors. So, I mean, I think this is a big part of the negotiation. I think this indicates that the Iranians are trying to stall and draw out time. And really, at this point of the negotiation, time is playing in the Iranians' benefit to a certain degree. And let me explain that. We know they don't care about casualties on their side. We know they sanctify death. We know they want to inflict maximum suffering, maximum pain, maximum financial damage. If they draw this out longer, that plays to their benefit. They have, relatively substantial cash reserves, oil reserves. They've prepared themselves for an extended war. They're happy waiting another week. They're happy to inflict pain and maximum political pressure and financial pressure, both on the US and European countries. That sort of plays along their narrative. So I don't know that this is really not a negotiation. It's not a negotiation in the traditional way where everyone says, this is what I want, let's sit down and talk. We're playing a negotiation that involves an active fist fight, Yael. While we're negotiating, we're bombing their targets. They're trying to get back into Israel. They're trying to bomb Israel. They're trying to use the Houthi proxies to cause damage to Israel. They're firing at American planes parked throughout the Middle East, which is very substantial. I mean, when you look at the financial costs of this, at least for a country like Israel, we're talking a substantial amount of money. For the American war machine, this is not a substantial financial loss, but for a country like Israel, it's considered a lot of money. They hit one of their intelligence planes just the other day on the tarmac in Saudi. So again, it's a substantial fight that's taking place where clearly Israel and the United States have the upper hand. But when it comes to the negotiation, we're very much in the early phase of this negotiation, very much so. I think there's possibly weeks ahead of us before anything substantial materializes and is clarified from this negotiation. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just means we're still in the early phase of it.
And we keep hearing reports especially now after the successful hit by the Iranians against the strategic airplane that was stationed in an airbase in Saudi Arabia. And the reports that we are hearing, I don't know if these are confirmed so far. I didn't see anything confirmed or unofficial, but that the Russians provided intelligence information to the Iranians on the whereabouts of this strategic plane in Saudi Arabia using their satellites. So can you elaborate on that? Is Russia an active participant in this war?
It depends who you ask. So let me tell you what we know, Yael. We know that in this last week, this has definitely become a global issue. How do we know that? President Zelensky of Ukraine was in the Emirates over the weekend. Did you follow this news? He's over there. While he's visiting the Gulf states, the Iranians strike a warehouse full of Ukrainian gear parked in, I believe it was in the Emirates in Dubai, if I remember correctly. Parked in Dubai. What is Ukrainian gear doing in Dubai? That's an easy question to answer. The Ukrainians fighting against the Russians have become masters of anti-drone warfare. But whose drones are the Russians deploying in the war against Ukraine? Iranian drones. The Shahed drones that have used extensively in the war in Ukraine. So it's this bizarre situation where you have Russia, who's been waging for 4 years now, since 2022, early 22, waging a war against the Ukraine, using Iranian drones and weaponry. So the Ukrainians learned how to fight those drones and are manufacturing elements and technology to fight that. They're sharing that technology and that knowledge with Israel and with the Gulf states to fight the Iranian drones right now. The Russians have been selling drones weapons technology to the Iranians, the S-300 systems, the S-400 systems, lighter anti-aircraft and other munitions to them on an ongoing basis. The Chinese have been selling technology to the Iranians too, and to other Russian allies. So it's very, very uneasy to see that they're all cooperating together. Zelensky sits down and he publicly says, clearly, I want you guys to know that the people giving intel to the Iranians are the Chinese and the Russians. And I dare say Zelensky didn't make that up when he said that. He knew what he was talking about. So I don't have to decide on my own. If a president of the Ukraine says this, he probably knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, very interesting to see where this heads up and if Russia will actually admit. But so far, all we heard from Russia regarding this war is calls to stop the escalation of this war, while they have been fighting a war for multiple years ongoing at this moment.
Let's just clarify, Yael. who were they calling on to stop the aggression? They weren't calling on the Iranians to stop the aggression. They were calling on the United States and on Israel to stop the aggression. And it just shows you the hypocrisy of some of the geopolitical conversations that take place. Hugely hypocritical, hugely marred conversation that's really marred by the politics and the desire of the different countries. Be assured that the Russians are highly concerned about what's happening in Iran, because what's happening in Iran affects their situation in the world. It's tying down the American assets in this region to be forced to fight them. Two, it shows the ability of Iranian and Russian weaponry to fight against the Americans and their technology. Like, what would make the Russians happier than an image of a Russian-made anti-aircraft missile hitting or almost hitting a F-22 or an F-35, like the top-of-the-line American aircraft. Nothing would make them more happy, nothing would make them more proud, and they're trying to do that, sometimes with AI, and secondly, also, we've seen quite a lot of footage of them using every possible munition to try and target these aircraft, and they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to do that, and so far have failed substantially. So yes, Russia has skin in the game. The Chinese have skin in the game because this is sort of a precursor of what's going to happen, in the South China Sea, which I think is a poorly named area of the world, because it's not exactly China, but let's call it the sea next to China, as it relates to Taiwan and the U.S. relationship there. So, tricky situation. A lot of countries are involved, and everyone's looking to see what's going to happen. I want to put one more thing, Yair, in everyone's minds, which is the leadership question. Right now, we've been observing President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, acting boldly, acting bravely, taking action where action was needed, even in a time of uncertainty and incomplete information. What we've also seen is cowardly behavior. I intentionally use that word. Cowardly behavior by the leaders of many European countries and by the leaders of some of the Gulf countries who chose time and time again not to take action. They wave their arms and they say, we're going to show you, we'll fight back. This is unacceptable behavior. But when it comes to putting troops on the ground, when it comes to putting ships in the Strait of Hormuz, when it comes to firing back at the Iranians, there's only two countries right now that are fighting the world's war. The United States and Israel, and to a very much lesser degree, the United Arab Emirates that did strike back at a limited manner against the Iranians. But really, there's a gap in leadership, a gap in, let's call it manly and true leadership, biblical leadership in the world, of people to really step up and be true men or true women of valor and stand up against this evil of Iran. And I'd encourage everyone to make a point of writing your politicians and say, you loser, how are you not fighting against this evil? How are you allowing other countries to fight our own war? How are we not in this game fighting them? Make some noise about the fact that no one else is standing up to the evil of the Iranian regime. I feel proud standing here, knowing at least our country is fighting against this evil. It's not guaranteed that we're going to win, but it never is guaranteed that you're going to win. Someone at least needs to stand up to these bullies and show them what true leadership looks like. And I'm waiting for other countries to join into this game and do the same thing.
And talking about true leadership, there are two irregular countries that just voiced support for Israel. One of them is our good friends, the Fijians, the island of Fiji, which has a little bit less than 900,000 population. And they just signed an official declaration, a diplomatic memoir of support to the state of Israel. Another one, they are just an amazing country. I got this notification by Fine, our good friend from Jerusalem. Big shout out to Fine. So that's one. And then the second one is the Ugandans. Uganda. Yeah. Can you tell us what happened there? That's very interesting also.
I have to tell you, this was a funny afternoon. I was reading some of the headlines coming out today. And I think he's the chief of staff for Uganda, essentially said, give the word and we will land a division of our soldiers in Iran and end this war. And essentially they've been on this role for, I think it's been the last 3 days, where they're continuously voicing support of Israel and saying that the Iranians are wrong in what they're doing and that they want to fight alongside Israel. And they're essentially saying, we're here, we're supporting you, this is the right thing to do, give the word, and we will come and fight with you against the evil Iranians. And one, I appreciate that, Yael. I don't know if there's an internal political reason for this. I don't care. I appreciate them standing with us. I appreciate them standing up for what is right and what is true. And I wish other countries around the world did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Mati. See you again tomorrow.
Thank you, Yael.
And to all of you that are just joining us now, we are TBN Israel, and we report daily about what's happening in Israel, in this land. So if you want to help us, make sure to look for the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Click it so you never miss another update of Israel and what's happening here. And if you want to look at behind the scenes, what's happening in this war, look for Yair Pinto, that's my name, and also Mati Shoshani. And you can see our social media platforms where we give you behind the scenes look of Israel under fire. So as Israel faces the growing reality of war with Iran, it's not only soldiers on the front lines, it's also children and families living here under constant threat, fear, and uncertainty. For many children, the trauma doesn't end when the sirens stop. It stays with them, in their sleep, in their thoughts, and in their daily lives. That's where Shiloh Israel Children's Fund is making a difference, providing critical trauma care, therapy, and ongoing support to help these children heal and rebuild. But they cannot do it alone. So if you want to stand with Israel's children in this critical time, please consider making a donation at israelchildren.org/help. Again, that's israelchildren.org/help, because they're the future of this land, and we need to help them get over this traumatic event. Sirens were heard again this morning from the Galilee to the Negev district in the south after 4 launches from Iran. All of them were intercepted. At almost the same hours, Air Force aircraft completed another wave of strikes deep inside Iran, in Tehran, in Shiraz, and in other strategic areas. The question now, as day 30 of the Roaring Lion War, or Epic Fury, comes to a close, is simple and sharp. Are we approaching the moment when the United States stops merely threatening and begins actually moving a ground phase that could change the entire war? To understand where this day is heading, we need to start with the last few hours. The IDF did not settle for just another strike on a warehouse or a launcher. This night, the Air Force of the Israeli Defensive Forces, directed by the military intelligence, struck the Central Iranian Defensive Ministry site for producing major components for ballistic missiles. This is not just another industrial site. It is one of only 2 sites of its kind in Iran where the regime develops and assembles critical components that are needed to make ballistic missiles operational for launch towards Israel. And alongside it, sites for manufacturing engines for ballistic missiles were also struck, as well as a site for producing and storing weapons, a site for manufacturing engines for unmanned aerial vehicles, and a central site for developing air defensive systems, including the production and storage of anti-aircraft missiles. This strike is important not only because of what was destroyed in it, but because of what it says about the direction of this war. In the first weeks, Israel and the United States focused on breaking launch systems, destroying air defenses, and striking the chain of command. Now, the center of gravity is moving deeper, not only to disable what Iran is operating now, but to erase its ability to rebuild. This is already a war over recovery capabilities, not only over stockpiles, not only over launchers, over the regime's ability to produce again the tools, the engines, the warheads, the guidance components, and the platforms without which a long war simply cannot be sustained. And that connects directly to the major economic blow of the weekend. Israel struck the largest steel plants in Iran. The coordinated strikes hit almost simultaneously at the heart of Iran's steel industry. The main plants that were hit were Mabrekach in Isfahan and Khuzestan in Ahvaz. These are not just economic symbols. These are sites, some of them partly owned by the Revolutionary Guards, and they form a base for the military industry. In Iran, steel is not only export revenue, it is raw materials for combat systems, missile production, armor, naval platforms, and heavy industrial components. According to the estimates, these plants are responsible for a huge share of national output, and hitting them erases not only money, but also industrial debt. In the defense establishment, they estimate that the damage caused to the regime by the strikes on the military industries is already measured in tens of billions of dollars. Very many factories were destroyed. Hundreds of commanders and professionals in the industrial network were eliminated. Industries for missile development were struck, together with optical systems, warhead development, engine production lanes, solid and liquid fuel facilities, and also components related to the nuclear track. This is the big difference compared to the previous operations. Not a pinpoint strike meant to delay, but a systematic erasure of entire factories on a very broad scale. That is why the sharp message was also heard from a senior Air Force official. The Iranians have been left militarily naked, and they still do not understand how much. But the damage is not only to the classical military industry. The nuclear program also continues to absorb human and professional blows. Today, there was a report of another senior figure in the nuclear program being eliminated, and that comes after reports of 3 scientists that were terminated in recent days. In some cases, amidst a series of mysterious explosions. When such key people are eliminated, the blow is not only to a building, it is a blow to the organizational memory that is accumulated, the knowledge, and the connection between research, production, and testing. That is why even if some of the sites can be rebuilt, it is not certain that those who drove them can be restored quickly. The air arena itself also continues to expand. Air Force aircraft completed another focused wave today against core infrastructure in Tehran and additional arenas, and at the same time, there were reports of strikes on the Revolutionary Guards targets in Shiraz as well. This is added to a broader move from the weekend in which more than 100 regime targets were struck. The targets included ballistic missile production sites, launchers ready for launch, air defense systems, unmanned aerial vehicles, and missile storage sites defined as a direct threat to the State of Israel. On the Lebanese side, more than 800 Hezbollah terrorists were eliminated, and more than 170 infrastructure sites of the organizations were attacked. In other words, even when the focus is in Tehran, Lebanon does not leave the screen for a moment. And above all of this sits the American story. On the outside, Washington speaks about negotiations. On the inside, the Pentagon is preparing for the possibility of a ground move in Tehran. This conversation is no longer being hidden. Senior Iranian officials are speaking about it publicly, claiming that the United States is openly sending a message of diplomacy while secretly preparing a ground attack. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf even said today that Iran's army is waiting for American forces to enter so that it can set them on fire and punish Washington's allies in this region. This is propaganda. This is a statement, but it also teaches something about what Tehran is already assuming. The American ground threat is seen as a real possibility. According to the latest reports, the American plans do not speak of a full invasion of Iran. They speak of raids by special forces and infantry against defined targets and of a campaign that could last for weeks. At the center is again KHARG Island, Iran's main oil island. This island has already been attacked from the air and from the sea, mainly around its docking facilities, but not at the oil infrastructure itself. Now, a broader possibility is being considered, not only to disable the island, but perhaps to seize it for a limited time or use it as an operational and economic card. Why KHARG Island officially? Because it is not just another target, it is a lifeline. This island sits on one of Iran's most sensitive export routes, and any deep strike on it damages not only oil revenues, but also the regime's economic room to maneuver, and also its ability to exert pressure through the Strait of Hormuz. And here we need to bring the second component of the American plan, opening up the strait. The Pentagon is preparing for the possibility of a campaign that will last for weeks in order to open the Strait of Hormuz, or at least break the mechanism of extortion and threats that the Iranians have built there. Because what Iran has done in the Strait in recent days is far beyond a theoretical threat. The Revolutionary Guards have deployed an arch defense. This is a formation. This includes anti-ship missile batteries, swarms of suicide drones, concealed mobile launchers, smart naval mines, and even a model of checkpoints and collection of transit fees from civilian vessels. In simple words, Tehran is trying to turn the world's most important energy route into a death trap, and at the same time, into the Revolutionary Guard's private bank. That is why the question now being asked in Washington is not only whether to sign an agreement, but how to sign an agreement without leaving in Iran's hands a strategic weapon that could be no less powerful than the nuclear one itself. And this is exactly the transition point where we need to pause for a second. If you want to truly understand this war, not only through the headlines, but through the full picture, this is the moment to follow us. So make sure to like, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another update about what's happening here, and that you will know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So on the military axis, we have force buildup on both sides. On the diplomatic axis, we have negotiations that doesn't look like they're going anywhere. And between the lines, we have really big moves that are being made in this region. And if this report helps you understand the Middle East better, again, share it with people who want to see the bigger picture. And now, we return to the straight of the heart of the event, because the heart of this day lies precisely at the meeting point between military attrition and the regime's internal breaking point. At a political level in the United States, they are currently examining two paths. One is to intensify the strikes even more until the full collapse of the rule of the Ayatollahs. The second is to use the economic siege together with the pounding of the industrial and naval sectors to bring Iran to a breaking point. The problem is that time works in both directions. On the one hand, more strikes mean more internal pressure on Tehran. On the other hand, every delay gives Iran an opportunity to build an extortion mechanism to Hormuz, play with the energy markets, and preserve the response capability through its proxies. And here comes the number that needs to be remembered. A month into this war, the American military leadership is already presenting an enormous scale of pounding. More than 11,000 targets have been struck inside Iran. More than 150 Iranian vessels have been damaged or destroyed. Just a few days ago, the number stood at more than 9,000 targets, more than 9,000 sorties, and more than 140 vessels. In other words, in less than a week, and while there is talk of negotiations, thousands more strikes and dozens of daily attacks at a high pace were added. The target list is impressive, and it teaches about the depth of the operation. Headquarters and intelligence branches of the Revolutionary Guards, the air defensive systems, the ballistic missile sites, coastal missile sites, military communications, infrastructure, missile and drone production plants, bunkers for storing weapons, ships, submarines, and military assistance facilities. The scale of the American firepower also teaches about intent. B-1, B-2, B-52 bombers, F-15, F-16, F-18, F-22, and F-35 aircraft, electronic warfare aircraft, refueling aircrafts, Apache helicopters, MQ-9 drones, one-way attack drones, nuclear aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, missile destroyers, and defensive systems like Patriot, THAAD, and HIMARS. This does not look like a force that came only to pressure Iran to sit at the table. This looks like a force building on all the options, from continued aerial pounding to the insertion of focused ground forces. But alongside this power, there is also an American vulnerability. that was exposed sharply. The E-3 Sentry aircraft that was hit at Prince Sultan base in Saudi Arabia is no longer being described only as an aircraft that was damaged, but according to some reports, as an aircraft that was destroyed and then taken out of service. This is a real strategic asset, a flying commander center, a warning control, a command system capable of seeing missile launches, drones, and air movements from hundreds of kilometers away, and managing the battle picture in real time. The United States has a very limited number of such aircrafts, and their production line is no longer active. Therefore, this loss, if it was indeed a total destruction, is not a local incident. It is a blow to Americans' vision and control capability in the Gulf. That is also where the Russian question comes from. Did Russia provide intelligence to Iran? At this stage, it is a claim under examination, not a settled fact. But according to the reports in Ukraine, they claim that Russia photographed the base by satellite 3 times before the strike took place. The logic behind this claim is clear. If the Americans helped Ukraine for a long time strike Russian command and control assets, Moscow may have used the current campaign to answer in kind through the Iranian axis. If that is true, this is not only tactical assistance, but a further deepening of cooperation between Russia and Iran, precisely at the moment when Washington has to decide whether it is going deeper into this war. Not far from there lies another point of weakness that Washington cannot ignore. At a distance of about 8 hours from the White House, according to one report, there may be up to 1,000 former Revolutionary Guards personnel in Canada. That number is disputed, and Canadian authorities say it is unfounded. But the very discussion around an Iranian ghost army waiting for orders also returns the issue of sleeper cells and transnational threat to the arena. So if some of those people are indeed connected to regime networks, and if operational messages to activate such cells were indeed intercepted, then from the American point of view, this is no longer just a question of a distant war in the Gulf. It is a security question creeping onto the North America continent as well. And inside Iran itself, the cracks are becoming more tangible. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is in direct confrontation with the Revolutionary Guards of Iran. And according to the reports, he warned that the Iranian economy may collapse within 3 to 4 weeks if a ceasefire is not achieved. He is demanding that executive powers be returned to the government, and is effectively arguing that the military management of the crisis is crushing the local economy. In contrast, Revolutionary Guards Commander Ahmed Vahidi rejects the demands. He is already stating that the ATM machines malfunctions is actually just a delay, and it is nothing to do with the ability to conduct this war. That means that the military pressure is starting to appear in the Iranian street, not only as bombings, but also as daily breakdowns in money, salaries, and basic services. And that is probably what they meant in the United States when they spoke about the Revolutionary Guard's breaking point. Not necessarily the immediate collapse of the missile systems, and not necessarily the disintegration of the whole chain of command in one day, but the moment when the military system begins to collide head-on with the economic system and the civilian government, when the president says that this cannot continue, and the Revolutionary Guards reply that there will be no surrender, that is not just a disagreement. It is an indication that the centers of power in Tehran are no longer speaking the same language. And the threat from the proxies must not be forgotten, because the Houthis in Yemen, they are back. And in the last 24 hours, they launched a ballistic missile towards Israel. They also launched a cruise missile. They also launched a drone. Their message is clear. They are not necessarily rushing to open a full direct front, but they are here to remind the entire region that there is another strait that can be disrupted, another trade route that can be threatened, and another Iranian card that can be pulled out at a sensitive stage of negotiations. In the IDF, They said that they prepared for this possibility from the very beginning, and that the Houthis are currently mainly a distraction. But even such a distraction can stretch the Air Force, expand the operational ranges, and remind Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, and Trump that the maritime arena does not end in Hormuz alone. In Lebanon, the picture remains hard. More than 800 Hezbollah terrorists have been eliminated since the beginning of the fighting, and more than 170 infrastructure sites have been attacked. But the arena is still burning. 4 divisions are operating in southern Lebanon. The fire continues, and even amidst the pounding of Iran, Israel is required to maintain an active front as well. The meaning is that anyone speaking about an American ground move in Iran must remember any such expansion can reignite Lebanon, Yemen, and the entire space between the Gulf and the Red Sea. And at the end of day 30, the picture is clearer than it was in the morning. Israel continues to chip away at Iran's core industries. The United States continues to talk about negotiations, but at the same time is building force scenarios and options for the next phase. Iran is trying to hold Hormuz, activate proxies, deter the region, and show that it can still strike expensive American assets. And inside Tehran itself, the real battle is no longer being fought only against Israel and the United States, but also between the president and the Revolutionary Guards, between the economy and the war, and between the desire to survive and the urge to escalate. Day 30 closes with Iran still firing, still threatening, but also bleeding at every one of its centers of power, from the factories through the nuclear program to the sea and the currency. And the question of day 31 is sharper than ever. Will Trump continue to strike from the outside, or will he really give the approval that will move this war into its most dangerous ground phase? So to all of you watching us, help us spread the truth of what's happening. You can do that by subscribing to TBN Israel on YouTube. You can do that by leaving a comment, sharing this video, and also giving us a like. Let us know where you're watching from. If you want to see this war through our eyes behind the scenes, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms. And the best thing you can do is pray for the situation. So make sure you pray for wisdom to our leaders, to your leaders. Make sure you pray for all the servicemen, women, first responders, those that are saving lives and fighting in the front lines. The IDF soldiers, the US, the Marines, the Air Force, all of them. They need your prayers, and their families need your prayers. Pray for our enemies to have a change of heart, to stop hating the Jewish people of Israel, to stop hating the West. God can make that happen. Pray for the children of Israel that need to rush to bomb shelters. Pray for the truth to go out from Zion. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.